Man, I really didn't want to make this video, but here we are. At the end of the day, I am an F1 YouTuber and I need to be real from time to time. So let's put aside the Ferrari bias and talk about McLaren this year. So in case you've been blind or are not a Formula 1 fan, firstly, why are you watching this? And secondly, you may have noticed how McLaren kinda have been winning a lot this year, like too much. I mean, it's no Red Bull 23 or Mercedes 16, but it for sure is a whole lot, which has led to most F1 fans saying how they're making the sport boring. And look, I'm not denying that. However, sometimes we need to get real and look at the issue as a whole. Yes, it is boring, but can you fault them? That MCL 39 car is a beautiful piece of engineering brilliance, since when was the last time a team has been very good, if not the best, in every single aspect of a F1 car? Like before 2020, the top teams would be categorized by their strengths. You had Red Bull with roughly the best chassis and cornering ability, you had Ferrari with roughly the best engine and straight line speed, and then you had Mercedes, who really weren't the best in anything. Rather, they struck a balance at being good at everything, which was enough for them to be extremely dominant. However, times have changed, and now I would say McLaren are just flat out the best at everything, the best at cornering, the best in the straights or near enough, and the best with reliability. And this didn't come out of nowhere. No, they fought for their lives for this for the past 10 plus years, which is why I don't feel any sort of hatred towards the team itself when it comes to their dominance. I feel it for the drivers. Anyways, you get the general idea now. So for this video, I thought, why don't we do the opposite of what we did for Ferrari when I said they deserve to lose, and tell you why McLaren deserve to win. Quick disclaimer though, I am obviously not a McLaren fan, so some inherent bias against them I have may slip in this video, but look, I'm trying my best, okay? So with that said, subscribe if you're new if you love waffles, and let's get into the video. Like with my Ferrari video, let us see how the season has played out for McLaren to understand why I say they deserve to win. Doesn't get easier saying that. Anyways, the season started in Bahrain for preseason testing, and heading into it, literally everyone had the expectation of McLaren being the outright fastest and the ones to beat in the season. So imagine everybody's faces when the thing I just said right now actually came true, instead of some ancient curse technique where somehow they were slow. Most people saw the preseason and started to write off the season, saying how McLaren will win the championship yet again, and even worse, one of their drivers will become champion. But come on guys, you think they just hand out these trophies for free? If you won the title, you obviously worked hard for it, made evident by the literal last season, since for the majority of it, McLaren had the best car, but yet Lando couldn't win the title and instead lost to Max in his tin can. Back on topic though, preseason would, like usual, be uneventful, so with McLaren seeming like the fastest, let us see how they fare in Australia. Melbourne is the host of the first Formula 1 weekend, and here is the first real indicator of how the season will likely pan out. Heading into the practices, of course McLaren were in the top 3 for all 3 of them, with them seeming like they have comfortably the fastest car. Sure, there were competitors like Max who was relatively close to them, but for the most part they seemed untouchable. To add to this, the team would lock out the front row of the grid for the race, and it seemed that this weekend was going to be an easy 1-2 finish for the Papaya team. However, someone was not happy with this. Mother Nature herself couldn't stand the sight of this Papaya dominance, so rain was set to fall for Sunday, and as we know in the sport, where there's rain, there's chaos. Now, despite the 2 McLaren boys making it safely off the grid, Piastri did lose the position to Max, and before he could possibly contest Lando, the dreaded safety car came out thanks to crap doo-doo. Once the safety car pulled in, the top 3 pulled out of the race, and in that time, Piastri got ahead of Max, and now McLaren were running away with the race win until someone fell asleep. Mother Nature seems to have fallen asleep watching nothing, so the rain stopped and the drivers went out on slicks. However, someone woke up. Mother Nature seems to— I'll stop. As soon as the rain stopped, it started again right when all the drivers pit, and this time, the rain would be super duper heavy, so with everyone hoping it would magically stop, the 2 McLaren boys fly right off the road, and in the case of Pastry, get stuck briefly on the grass before he can escape. Luckily for him though, the safety car came out again for PM Porson, so he was saved from almost total embarrassment. So the race would eventually end with Lando narrowly getting the dub from Max and McLaren getting a good but not great start to the season. After that craziness, the season would finally get a normal start in China, since the weekend was much more quiet. Despite that though, this was also the first sprint weekend, so depending on how McLaren played their cards, it could be double the pride or double the fall. Practice showed that the McLaren boys are still fast since they topped that session, but qualifying would be different. SQ1 and SQ2 would see Lando being fast and set for pole. However, in SQ3 where it matters, it seems he got lobotomized, since not only did he drive slower, but also made mistakes, which led to him being P6 for the sprint race and Oscar only P3 after not matching Lewis or Max. So now the sprint race, and with Lando down the order, it's time for a comeback. Okay, it seems he heard throwback, since I don't think that's the optimal line, buddy. The rest of the sprint race would see him being stuck behind Lance and not contest for anything meaningful, while Oscar finishes in second. Double the fall it seems. Or is it? Because for the real qualifying and race, Piastri gets pole position and Lando improves to third, which leads to the race being an absolute snoozer. Lando got ahead of George immediately and McLaren ran away with a 1-2 win at China, with Piastri getting that dub. So if not double the fall, then half the pride, half fall, I don't know. What I do know is that these next races are a doozy with the exception of Japan. Round 3 of the F1 season sees McLaren looking very fast again. However, it seems Max Verstappen has gone the mushroom power up from Mario Kart since he was right behind them, or rather ahead of them. Max took the pole position right out of Lando's hands and then put it on cruise control to win the race on Sunday. Again, McLaren were still very fast, but it seems they need to be faster in regards to their driver since Max just kept them 2 seconds behind with no hope for victory. Plus, there was the added detriment of them experiencing their first driver trouble since Piastri claimed he was faster than Lando, but the team ultimately did not swap the positions. So a scruffy week for the Papaya team, but now is when these races become super forgettable. Round 4 in Bahrain sees no competition from any team since Piastri gets the pole and wins. However, Lando certainly didn't make things super sweet for them with his P6 qualification and P3 race finish. Round 5 in Saudi Arabia sees a little competition from Max. However, Piastri gets the win from second anyways, but again with Lando, he crashes in qualifying and only finishes in P4 for the race. Miami needs to see him bounce back, and he kinda did. He won the sprint race, but they were in Mickey Mouse conditions. He qualified second for the main race behind Max, but instead of overtaking him and winning on race day, he sat behind his ass for way too many laps, which only led to Piastri winning from P4 after he was able to overtake Max fairly quickly. So while McLaren have been dominating these races with Piastri, they still aren't maximizing their car to the fullest, which is bad since if a team like Red Bull could find a 10th or 2, they will be vulnerable. And what's that? Red Bull found a 10th or 2? Uh-oh. Imola would see McLaren at their arguably weakest since Max from P2 was able to pull Oscar's pants down and run away with the win. This led to Lando finishing in second place from P4 and Oscar P3 from pole. A scruffy weekend. However, Monaco would be anything but since here is where they were arguably the strongest. In the weekend, Lando was mostly flawless with his pole and win. However, Oscar did rack up a few mistakes which for any normal team would lead to a bad weekend. However, my guy still qualified and finished P3, which yes, it's not the maximum, but for a driver who hit more walls than Tiger Woods after a party, P3 should not have been on the cards, which leads us to Spain. Spain is where they were the strongest, not arguable. They topped every session, including quali and race, and were quite literally untouchable. And the big plot twist? They were supposed to be nerfed here. A technical directive which was aimed to slow their car down didn't do shit since they still dominated like it was absolutely nothing. Now what if I were to tell you this same team just 10 years back in 2015 at Spain finished 16th and DNF'd. 10 years ago, teams like Mercedes, Red Bull, or Ferrari were contesting for top 5s while McLaren would have a good day with a P12 finish. How on earth have they pulled it off? Well, if you talk to a hater, they might say they cheated because of this or that. However, the truth is, they just trusted the process. Zach Brown entered into the team in 2016 and became their CEO in 2018, and he knew that a team so filled with history, heritage, and legacy cannot be finishing below the top 10 minimum. So we got the team new sponsors, new drivers, new shareholders by making critical sacrifices, which have led to their gradual ascent towards dominance. In 2019, they became a midfield team. In 2020, they became higher up in the midfield and contested for podiums. In 2021, they got even more higher with the win and many podiums. They did experience a slight setback in 2022, but after changing around the team some more that year in the early bits of 2023, they got it. It clicked. With new hirings like Andrea Stella and many new engineers, an upgrade package in Austria and Silverstone 2023 launched McLaren from the back of the grid to the front. Like the literal front. Almost every single round they got a podium and were set to become Red Bull's next challengers. And with another upgrade package in Miami 2024, Red Bull suddenly became McLaren's challengers. Plus, with even more hirings like Rob Marshall, their car has become so immensely strong in tire wear, brake and engine cooling, front and rear wings, literally all the components that make a good Formula 1 car. So with the new brilliant minds at the team since 2017 and the car that suffers from no or very little problems, surely there is a weak link, and in my opinion, I believe it is their drivers. Now, I know, they are winning still, but please, hear me out. Let's head back to the season so far. Piastri is very susceptible to many mistakes, like in Monaco. Lando has had horrible qualifying performances this year. All I'm saying is, their drivers have flaws that need to be ironed out should they want to be respected in the grid by fans. It is objectively lame to see a driver rack up mistakes in the weekend, but still win thanks to their car. Lewis in 2020 had flawless qualifyings and races, same with Max in 2023, which sure, still led to us complaining. However, that's because it's boring to see the same guy win, not lame to see a driver who wasn't flawless get a perfect result. However, let's not pretend that Oscar and Lando are ass drivers. No, they are some of the best in the field, since we know Lando has blistering pace and Oscar near perfect consistency and calmness. What they need is to be that every single week, which is something they are failing at for now. And they should probably refine these things soon, since the future is always unknown. For all we know, all the praise I gave them right now can be for nothing, since what if for the 2026 regulations, McLaren become backmarkers again? If their reign is going to end, then it will be to the same degree as Mercedes and Red Bull, and quite literally every single team that has ever dominated in F1 history. There will come a point where the team's top engineers, leaders, and strategists will be poached by other teams and will leave their current team. I mean, McLaren literally did that, since many of their engineers came from prior dominant teams, so McLaren can certainly expect the same by the end of the decade. However, for now, the near future seems to be all sunshine and rainbows. Despite what I just said with the McLaren drivers, Piastri is starting to find the consistency more and more. I mean, he has 5 wins this season already, and Lando, when he doesn't bottle, is getting faster and faster. Compare 2024 Lando to 2025 Lando, and while he still makes mistakes, it is undeniable how much more consistent, patient, and fast he is. We have to remember, these guys were thrusted into all of this extremely fast, and they still need time to adjust. Of course, you could look at a driver like Max and be like, he didn't need that much time, but that's just rewriting history. Max was a super mistake-prone driver until 2019, I'd say. Those 4 years before 2019 were him adjusting to being at the front, and guarantee you, if Red Bull were championship contenders in 2017 or 18, Max wouldn't be a champion, and I'd still go with Lewis. So give Lando and Oscar a break sometimes. Take it from me, of all people. So that was why McLaren deserves to win. Basically, it's because they fought tooth and nail for it, and their car is full of engineering brilliance. While their drivers may not be perfect, they are still showing improvement, and when they cook, they cook. So if you still doubt their ability, you won't doubt come season end, I'd say. But man, this video was hard to make, so let's go back to hating McLaren. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for their continued support, and make sure to join if you want cool benefits, as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, since it really helps me out, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of McLaren. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.